Democrats were the ones that were for slavery. The Democrats were the ones that came up with the Jim Crow stuff.
Even if all of that were true about slavery, which party flies the Confederate flag today?
A lot of the Democrats.
You really think Democrats fly the Confederate flag more than
Democrats
Republicans?
yes. They're
Overwhelmingly, you'll see a Confederate flag right next to a Trump flag. That's just how it works nowadays.
I haven't seen that overwhelmingly.
You really? Was it Democrats or Republicans trying to take down Confederate statues?
Confederate statues?
Which party was trying to take down Confederate statues?
What's the statue got to do with?
You're saying that Democrats are pro-Confederate, but weren't Democrats trying to remove Confederate statues?
Why are they doing that?
Because they're anti-Confederate.
No, they're not.
What did we just watch? We watched the entirety of what the Republican Party has become.
Why are they trying to remove the statues then?
Because they're trying to change the history of our country. Take your camera and go interview all these black people that are here, okay?
Yeah.
And you ask them.
The three black people that are here?
If you ask them.
It's not just this lie about Republicans not supporting the Confederate or not seeing Confederate flags almost every time you see a Trump flag. That's not it. That is the blatant. It's the what's unsaid. If you pay attention to this idea, this way of thinking, this way of not seeing what's in front of you, it allows you to accept Donald Trump's behavior.
I believe we became a slave state in 1870 when our birth certificates started to get sold to the companies, and so there's like three different kinds of laws out there, and I don't understand it completely. I'm still.
So were we Christian while we had slavery here?
Well, being Christian is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
No, I meant as a nation, because we were talking about being a Christian nation. That's what you had said before.
Well, yeah, we were, but many of us were deceived, and many of us were not accountable due to churches not teaching the truth about different things.
I see.
You know, we need to keep in mind too, we didn't invent slavery, we ended it. It was a really hard thing to do. I mean, we fought a civil war over it. England ended slavery just before that, but slavery existed everywhere throughout all of humanity.
This explains everything about those who follow Donald Trump. Consider this. Trump tells lies every time he's in front of a microphone, and most of the time when he's not. Basically waking up to tell a lie is what Donald Trump is. His people never see him as a liar. Trump breaks laws. People do not care.
Is there anything Donald Trump could do to disqualify him from your vote?
No.
Nothing at all. If he just walked up and shot me.
If it was self-defense.
Is there anything he could do to disqualify you from supporting him?
I don't think so.
It's only because this way of thinking that this is possible. The idea that you've never seen a Confederate flag or don't see a Confederate flag and you're at a Trump rally when you see Trump flags is ludicrous. But so is the idea of supporting Donald Trump and the big lie and every other lie he's told. The stealing of confidential documents. All of that is distinctively necessary. If you are to believe Donald Trump, you need this mindset where I've never seen that. Ask all these black people. It's three of them. That level of willing to try to lie and paint a picture that does not exist. Trump is unchecked in what he says. This is why every time this man gets checked, he looks like he's lost the Olympic race. Then the reporter, Mockler, who does a wonderful job here, says, all three black people, and he's stunned that he was called on it. He's showing that he's been at a Donald Trump rally and nobody checks him on his lies. Trump has the largest rallies, but we've seen and saw Barack Obama's rally. We've seen and saw Bernie Sanders' rally. We know it's not true. They don't care. They see the world in a different way. This idea that you want to stay with what was and what isn't right now. Meaning you want to focus on the fact that Democrats was the party of Dixiecrats or those who own plantations. This is a fact. But you don't want to talk about that conversation, which is necessary. If you're going to have that conversation, you need to talk about that was the was. So now you have to talk about the is. So what is the Democratic Party and what is the Republican Party now? If you remember in 1964, when one of those first parties, Democrats and Republicans, sacked a black person, Fannie Lou Hamer and her contingent from Mississippi, all the racist Democrats left to join the Republican Party. Some of those racists that you may know are Ronald Reagan, Strom Thurmond. Yeah, all of those guys left to join the Republican Party because the Democratic Party decided to see black people. So we need to talk about what was and what is. And right after that, the Republicans started building out the Southern strategy, which was to use white fear white racism to turn out votes for Republican candidates, and it's not stopped since. So if you want to talk about was, be sure to talk about what is, because what's suffering black people right now, is a problem. The institutional racism absolutely is a problem, but the is also killing us for sure. And that is the Republican Party. And that is why we find ourselves at this point. And that is why this man don't know that Confederate flags and statues are being taken down by Democrats, including one by myself in my hometown where I'm mayor, and I'm also a Democrat. So newsflash, buddy, even though it won't help, you, Donald Trump, and the rest of you deplorables are ruining our democracy from a black guy.
If we go back like a couple hundred years, it was pretty normal to own slaves. Is that right or correct?
Why are we talking about slavery?
Because I'm showing you why the ad populum fallacy is a logical fallacy.
Honestly, back then, a lot of black people participated in the slave trade themselves, so...
Yeah, that doesn't make slavery right. Are you trying to defend slavery?
It was a product of the time, dude.
Are you trying to defend slavery?
Did you not see Matt Walsh's new video on this topic?
In fact, it seems rather clear that black Americans are doing better here today than they would be had their ancestors generations ago never been brought to these shores. We can prove this point by simply asking which African country anyone asking for reparations would prefer to live in. The answer, of course, is none of them.
One of the biggest brain-dead arguments that racists always make about how, well, black people are better off nowadays because slavery happened. I mean, look at African countries now. Name a single one where you'd want to live. You know, well, they don't name places like Nigeria, Algeria, Tunisia, South Africa, Egypt, Ghana, places where people often go to relocate and places that have heavy influence over the African economy and where many industries are budding. Not only that, they don't take into consideration the hundreds of years of colonization and how France is still mining minerals and European countries are still taking resources from the African continent, and how in many ways through warlords and just so many different types of conflicts that have happened as a result of colonization, many of the African countries simply haven't caught up with Western society. So it's really just a stupid argument to be made, on top of the fact that there are a variety of African countries that are pretty wealthy and where people live pretty good lives. But when you turn on the television in America, all you see is that same hungry kid that they've been showing on TV for the last 30 years. And that's what people think, or at least people like Matt Walsh think, when they think about African countries.
So I'm just going to say that in general, I think it's wrong to own humans.
Of course. We're not in that time period anymore.
But you're defending slavery.
I'm not defending it. I'm saying it was a product of the time.
And then when people talk about slavery, like, well, that's just kind of how things were back then, and now we don't have it. That's not true whatsoever. Slavery still happens today. It's one of the most negative parts of the human reality that people have been doing to each other since civilization has existed. In fact, we know slavery still exists in places like Libya, Burundi, the Central African Republic, Afghanistan, South Sudan, Pakistan, Cambodia, places like Dubai, Saudi Arabia. Slavery is still China, you know what I'm saying? The Uyghur slaves. Slavery is still something that happens. So it's not like it's just a thing of the past. You know, which is very problematic when people talk about it like that. Like, oh, it was just, you know, something that we just got past and now America's standing on top and black people are better off because of it. No, again, it's not gone. So talking about it in the past tense really isn't helpful for anybody.
You said that black people enjoy being slaves.
I think there were probably a good majority of black people who back then were born and raised as slaves, probably because that's the only thing they knew. It was the environment they grew up in. If they had a slave owner who treated them well, they probably enjoyed their lives, a few of them. I think it's illogical to believe that every person who was a slave back then hated their life. I truly think that's illogical. I do.
I'm pretty sure that being owned is not a good thing.
And then for like 2 minutes, they argued about how, well, there were, you know, I'm sure there were some slaves who enjoyed it because that's all they knew. I mean, why was that even a point that was brought up? I mean, what would that have been if there was anybody who did enjoy it? What, like 0.2% of the entire slave population, 0.1% of the entire slave population? Why are we even discussing this? Why is this even a part of the argument? You know, but again, and then she pointed out that, well, did you listen to Matt Walsh, the guy who went on Joe Rogan and said that millions of children are being forced to undergo, gender reconstruction and different types of surgeries and stuff like that. And it's like, actually, the number's pretty low. It's under 1,000. And then he's like, oh, well, you know, going from 1,000 to millions is quite a jump. So obviously this isn't a man who we should be looking to for any type of intellectual leadership. But this whole conversation was ridiculous. And the way that some conservatives still talk about slavery just shows how ignorant and uninterested in history and reality they truly are.